Good Thursday morning, Northstate. Preston, Donion here on a weather alert day. And I don't like to throw these out there lightly, but I do think the setup today necessitates it. We've got critical fire danger related to lightning over the higher terrain, and that's the big focus for us. So we're going to get into those details and talk about why we're triggering this and why it reminds me of early July. July 1st in particular was the last time we called one of these weather alert days, and that was a day where we saw widespread lightning across the region. I believe over 10,000 lightning strikes in Northern California in just that 24-hour period alone, and that led to several significant fires, right? We talk about the Green Fire, the Horse Fire, the Summit Fire, all started July 1st alone, and then we saw other fires pop up in later days that we can't necessarily say exactly when they started, but think about the Butler Fire. Came from that same period of instability and strong thunderstorm activity that led to, well, now a fire that's still over 18,000 acres and growing. So that's why I want to call for a weather alert day today. You've got that red flag warning in effect for those areas in red, so much of Siskiyou, Modoc, and Trinity counties, a little bit of the interior of Humboldt and Del Norte counties, and you'll see that these areas are kind of weird and jagged, and some spots are included, some are not. What's going on there? Well, these are actually designated along fire weather zones, and these are separate from your counties or different town jurisdictions. This is fire weather zones, just based on the fuels and the dynamics, the weather in different areas, and so that's why you can get this kind of piecemeal construction. But red flag warning out there for the areas in red today. And then for that color tan that you see kind of dragging further south and then kind of outlining all of this area in red, that means that we have a fire weather watch. Now that's in effect for tomorrow, but what I'll tell you right now is you may be watching this here later on Thursday. I'm recording just about 8 o'clock and it's a fire weather watch right now, but I fully expect this to be elevated to a red flag warning for your Friday. So to simplify this, if you're in that red right now, that's a red flag warning for today. If you're in that red or that tan, you've got a red flag warning tomorrow. That's the expectation right now because critical fire danger continues on Friday, and we'll take a look at that with your thunderstorm outlooks. Here's the expectation for your Thursday. You can see the Storm Prediction Center highlighting the northeast corner of the state as the main area to see that development, but I've put a couple little icons in spots that I think are worth watching closely, right? Modoc and Lassen counties are going to be the first places to see those thunderstorms fire up this afternoon because we're getting counterclockwise rotation around a center of low pressure that's somewhere south below me here in the bottom corner of your screen, right? It's hanging out just offshore, spinning idly out there and then kicking moisture off of the ocean and into the Northstate. And so we have maybe a little bit more humidity out there, and if you're not underneath the thunderstorms, you might still feel it a little bit muggier today than yesterday, despite temperatures being just about the same. That's because that moisture is out there, especially in the mid-levels of the atmosphere where we can get these thunderstorms to develop and really pop up. So with that counterclockwise rotation, you're going to see the first cells fire up along the Nevada border like we talked about, and then gradually rolling out to the west as we head through the evening, and that's why you see that arm extend into portions of Humboldt and Del Norte counties. I think that's a little over-exaggeration of where we'll see things happen today, but you have to really cover your bases, right? And I think that's what the Storm Prediction Center is doing here. If you're in that green, you've got a chance at seeing some thunderstorms today, but the big focus is going to be a little bit further to the north and east, so you look at Lassen, Modoc, and Siskiyou counties as your best bet for action on Thursday. Friday shows more of the region underneath that thunderstorm concern, and you see Trinity County now fully included in that, and we continue down into the valley with some chances, and that's not entirely out of the question, but you're still going to focus over the higher terrain. And again, I've put those icons in the areas that we'll be watching most closely for pretty prolific thunderstorm development: Trinity County, Lassen County, and Siskiyou County. Now, looking at that Storm Prediction Center fire weather outlook, right, those we just looked at, those thunderstorm outlooks, come from the same agency, and this is their fire weather outlook. So they talk about, elevated critical or extreme fire danger, and that usually relates to winds and things like that. Earlier in the season, we saw an area of elevated fire danger throughout the south end of the valley related to strong winds coming out of the north. But this time around, it's all about that lightning. And usually when we look at this map, you'll see that area in brown, a concern for isolated dry thunderstorms. We saw that really pretty widespread, kind of in a horseshoe around the valley at the beginning of the month, and that led to significant lightning fires popping up. The reason why I kind of finally gave in and said, yep, we're going to call it a weather alert day, is when I saw this outlook come out late last night. This shows an area of scattered dry thunderstorms. And you might go, isolated versus scattered, is that really that different? It is. When we get to scattered, that's more widespread dry thunderstorm activity than what you're hearing with that isolated. And so I think fire ignitions are very likely in those areas in red, particularly in those early afternoon hours when we get those first couple thunderstorms rolling through. And if you go to the Storm Prediction Center, you can go to it, just look up the SPC, you'll go to their website, you can look at their full discussion, and I think they do a great job of breaking down that threat. But what they talk about a lot is that we're going to see really dry air in the low and mid levels, that rain from the thunderstorms is going to fall into, especially in the early hours of this action this afternoon. So in that 2-3 o'clock window, those first couple thunderstorms are going to be dropping rain into dry air. And dry air is thirsty. It wants to soak up that rain and evaporate it out. And so when we evaporate that rain, it doesn't reach the ground, but the lightning still does. As you head later into the afternoon and more cells roll through and we continue that track, right? Storms are going to be rolling slowly but surely off to the west. You're kind of loading those lower and mid levels of the atmosphere with more moisture. And all of a sudden, it's not as thirsty. It's going to let that rain fall through. And so you have wetter thunderstorm activity. And that's why Siskiyou County doesn't see as critical of a threat for dry thunderstorms. But it's still a concern. And what I want to mention when we look at this is that lightning ignition efficiency. It doesn't really matter if it rains, because we saw places get rain out of those thunderstorms at the beginning of the month and still see lightning fires pop up. It matters how much we've got in terms of fuel moisture, because a lot of the fuels out there, think about how densely forested and those big massive trees that make up the higher terrain. Those are pretty big fuels. We talk about light, fine, flashy fuels. That's your grasses and things like that you typically see in the valley floor. But once you get into the Douglas firs and all these towering, tall, long-lived trees, those fuels take way longer to respond to changes in moisture. It takes until September, October, when we're stacking these wet days for those areas to all of a sudden be dampened down and less primed to ignite. So I've kind of zoomed this out to a weird perspective so you can see that scale. We talk about those areas in yellow having 11 to 15% chance of lightning ignition and 16 to 20% for those areas in that kind of pinky salmony orange. What are we talking about? Well, lightning ignition efficiency. And you see a lot of the Northstate in that yellow or orange. So we're talking about an 11 to 20% chance that any given lightning strike in that area would ignite those fuels. Really, really concerning when we talk about, hey, yeah, maybe you've got some rain falling through, a couple raindrops with that thunderstorm, you should be good to go. But you might not, because when we get tons and tons of lightning, that 10 to 20% chance means some significant ignitions. We're going to see several out there almost certainly as we head through the next 24 hours. And that's what I'm concerned about for your Thursday and again on Friday, maybe to a slightly lesser extent, but I do think that dry lightning is going to be a major issue for us as we head through the next couple days. Let's look at it in two different models. First of all, our IBM model, in-house precision cast, does a pretty good job, I think, of showing where that moisture pops up and kind of isolating it to the areas that are most likely to see thunderstorm development. It starts in the early afternoon, right along the Nevada border, fires off into the afternoon. You see Lassen, Modoc, and Siskiyou counties, the big focus for that. Here's 4 o'clock, and we'll continue into the evening, seeing maybe the I-5 corridor in Siskiyou County, closer to Weed, maybe getting impacted by a heavy cell. And you don't want to get into the specifics, right? Don't focus on the nitty-gritty, but focus on the areas where that development's happening. It may not happen right over Weed, but it will happen somewhere in Siskiyou County because we have the ripe conditions for storm development, and things start to kind of finally wind down into the evening. Maybe you see some creeping into Plumas or far eastern Tehama counties with just a little moisture as things wind down for the night. It'll probably be pretty muggy out there close to midnight, and then we head through into your Friday and we'll do it all over again. And of course, we'll talk more about this in detail when we get to Friday, but I want to show you those thunderstorms now so that you prepare ahead for another day of active weather. Firing off along the Nevada border, but also getting started in Trinity County a little bit earlier, and that's where you might see things get a little more active tomorrow than today. But of course, look at Lassen, Modoc, Plumas counties. Those are absolutely lit up like a Christmas tree when we get into that precision cast window for late tomorrow afternoon, and Siskiyou County kind of winds things down for your Friday night. And just for fun, we'll take you into Saturday. Notice we've still got a couple cells out there, nowhere near as active as Thursday, Friday, but we're not out of the woods yet. And finally, very quickly, I want to fly you through one more model for today, just to talk about where we might see those thunderstorms fire up. Great agreement on that Lassen, Modoc County start to things this afternoon. This model's a little more aggressive with that low-level moisture, and so you'll notice that these storms are kind of broader, big brush strokes painting in there and bringing rain down to maybe Millville. Don't count on that. It's an outside chance, but you're really going to focus on those areas with those darker oranges and reds, showing that we have thunderstorm development pretty significant across the northern tier, gradually sneaking off to the west through the evening tonight and into early tomorrow. And then just because we have about 20 seconds left before my recording cuts off, here we go into your Friday afternoon. We do it all over again, and maybe Shasta County's in the mix for a little bit of that. Please report any smoke that you see out there and make smart decisions, or as I say, DDST, don't do stupid things. Mother Nature's already doing enough stupid things with this crazy weather. Stay safe out there. I'll see you on Daybreak again tomorrow.